The Muir of Dinnert in the northeast of Scotland has a history of human habitation since the last ice age. Today, on this fine early spring morning, it's the ideal time to take a walk round Loch Kinord and visit places of interest on the way. The walk starts from the public car park in the little village of Dinnert in Royal Deeside. The path is clearly marked and quickly heads into a pine forest. On the way, the path passes Dinnert's curling pond and pavilion. Perhaps pavilion is too grand a name for the wooden shed overlooking the pond. Clearly, it has seen more glamorous times. After crossing the Cleric burn, the path leads to a small lochan, Cleric Loch. A good viewing platform is situated at the edge of the loch. In the summer, the loch is full of water lilies and wildlife, so it's well worth a photo stop. This loch is actually man-made. In 1888, it was created as a reservoir to provide hydropower to nearby Dinnert House. Leaving Cleric Loch, the path heads west. Eventually, a farm track is reached, protected by double gates. Crossing the farm track brings you into the Muir of Dinnert National Nature Reserve. This is an area of heaths, bogs and mixed woodlands, all formed since the last ice age. Evidence of the ice age is everywhere, the most obvious of which is Loch Kinord itself. Loch Kinord and its near neighbour, Loch Davin, are examples of kettlehole lochs. Put simply, when the ice sheet, originally a kilometre thick, melted at the end of the ice age, enormous blocks of ice were left stranded. One of these was at Kinord and the other at Davin. Over time, these ice blocks melted, leaving giant puddles which formed Loch Kinord and Loch Davin. Loch Kinord is shallow, with an average depth of approximately 2 metres. In fact, its depth has been artificially modified a number of times. The walk continues through woodland along the east shore of Loch Kinord. You often see greylag geese grazing here in the fields and taken to the water when you get too close. Kinord has a rich variety of plants and animals. Between Old and New Kinord is a large stand of aspen trees, which is a habitat to rare mosses and fungi. 140 species of birds have been seen around Kinord. Otters frequent the lochs, but you'd be very lucky to see one. If taking an evening stroll on the reserve, you have a good chance to spot bats flying among the trees and over the loch, as 3 species of bat have been noted here. Many species of insects inhabit the marshy areas. Spring is the breeding time for frogs and toads, so the loch edges and the ponds are full of tadpoles. When the young frogs and toads leave the water, they become a hazard to walkers. Huge numbers appear on the paths, and it becomes almost impossible not to stand on them. In the drier areas, you might come across an adder soaking up the sun. They really aren't dangerous to humans if they're left alone. But dogs can have a problem unless they're kept on a lead. After reaching the north shore of the loch, there is an option to continue north across the open field area to New Kinord, where a path leads up the bank to a group of hut circles. It would be easy to walk past this area without noticing the circular rings of stones around depressions in the fields. These are the remains of ancient dwellings. It's thought that sometime between 1000 BC and 1000 AD, a thriving community lived and worked here. It's possible that the huts would have looked similar to the reconstructed roundhouse at Archeolic in Oin near Inch, sadly closed in 2011. Having explored this mysterious place, head back down to the loch, where one of the little islands on the loch also holds a secret. This island was created by Iron Age people, driving oak posts into the loch bed and then building a dwelling on top. These Iron Age loch constructions are known as crannogs. A crannog reconstruction was built on Loch Tay as an interpretation centre and visitor attraction. Unfortunately, the building was destroyed by fire in 2021. An ancient log boat was found on the loch bed close to the Kinord crannog. It was probably similar to this one found in Loch Tay, and now on display in the McManus Gallery in Dundee. Further west, along the loch's edge, there is a bigger island just offshore, known as Castle Island. It too may have started life as a crannog. There's evidence that stone and soil were brought onto the island to build it up and level it. There was certainly a stone causeway linking it to the loch's edge, which has now disappeared. The first record of a castle here is in 1335 AD. During the Second War of Scottish Independence, the Earl of Atholl was defeated in battle at the nearby Culblane Hill, while fighting on the side of John Balliol. His defeated troops took refuge here before surrendering to Sir Andrew Murray's Scottish forces. The castle continued in use until it was destroyed by an Act of Parliament in 1649. The path now turns away from the loch and climbs up towards a Pictish cross slab. This Pictish stone is classified as a Class 3 stone, as it's a later one containing both Pictish and Christian symbols. It's thought this slab was originally sited at a chapel connected to the nearby castle, but the actual location of the chapel is unknown. Further inland, between Loch Kinord and Loch Davin, lie the ruins of Old Kinord. This area includes one of the best Iron Age settlement sites in northeast Scotland. It was occupied between the 2nd century BC and the 2nd century AD. Archaeologists have determined that the settlement was enclosed by a wall and comprised 18 structures, including roundhouses and 2 earth houses for storage. People lived and farmed here right up until the 1950s. In fact, in the 1840s, this was home to 22 people occupying 6 cottages. Only piles of rubble now remain. The walk now continues through quite lush woodland, climbing gently up towards the Burn of Vat Visitor Centre. On the way, there's more evidence of the landscape left by the retreating ice sheet. More kettle hole ponds and deposits of glacial gravels known as kames and eskers. From the visitor centre, there's a very short walk to another impressive reminder of the last ice age, the Burn of Vat. The Vat Burn is now a gentle, meandering little stream. But about 14,000 years ago, as the ice sheet melted, it was a raging torrent. A great river tumbled down the Vat Gorge, carrying rocks and debris with it. At the entrance to the vat, you can see some of the large rocks deposited by the force of the river. To get into the vat, you have to clamber across these boulders and squeeze through the narrow entrance slit. Unfortunately, there's no elegant way to accomplish this, but the surprise waiting for you is worth the effort. Inside is a circular chamber 18 metres in diameter, with soaring walls allowing just a glimpse of the sky above. At the far end, the vat burn forms a little waterfall. This giant pothole started life as a weak spot in the granite rock of the river bed. A small circular hole was cut out by the force of the water swirling pebbles round and round. Over hundreds of years, this hole got larger and larger, allowing bigger and bigger pebbles and rocks to grind away the surrounding granite. Eventually, this enormous chamber was cut into the rock. It's said that local cattle and sheep rustlers used the vat as a hiding place, for themselves perhaps, if not for their livestock booty. Leaving the vat once again through the narrow gap, there's a short walk to a viewpoint which is worth a visit. The path to the viewpoint runs along an esker, a sand and gravel ridge left by the glacier's meltwater. On leaving the Vat Visitor Centre, the Kinord circular path again makes its way back down to the loch. Here we meet the Vat Burn again at the old township of Bogangore. This large flat area stretching down to the loch at Bogangore was created when the flooding meltwaters from the vat spread out, creating a large delta of sand, silt and gravel. The path heads past the Bogangore cottage and soon re-enters the woodland, making for the south edge of the loch. On the bank above the loch's edge is the small holding of Michael Kinord. There's a record that in the early 17th century the tenant farmer paid his annual rent in meal, sheep and cut peats. The peat probably coming from the nearby Parkin's Moss. In the 16th century, this was the site of a small chapel. A new private chapel was built close to the site of the ruined one in 1885, but it was never consecrated or officially used for worship. It was then planned to make it into a museum to house artefacts found in the loch and surrounding area. Nothing came of that, and it later became a store for the small holding. A short way further along the south shore of the loch, the path eventually meets the outgoing route at the entrance to the Muir of Dinnert Nature Reserve. From here, there's a walk of 1 kilometre back to the car park at Dinnert. If you've managed to visit all the sites and places of interest on this walk, well done, but make sure you return soon.